Tonight, mind-blowing new developments in the brutal murder of University of Virginia co-ed and star lacrosse player Yeardly Love. Her ex-boyfriend and fellow lacrosse player George Huguley allegedly told police he did it. Still, cops were back at his apartment today, hauling away computers and stained clothing. 22-year-old Yeardly Love was found dead inside her apartment Monday morning. She was lying on her bed, face down on her pillow, in a pool of blood. Cops say evidence quickly led them to that man right there, George Huguley. Court documents show he told police they got into a fight and he shook her violently, banging her head against the wall several times. Still, his lawyer calls Love's death a tragic accident. Really? As we first reported to you last night, Huguley has a history of violence. He was arrested in 2008 for public intoxication and resisting arrest. The cop who took him in says he was so out of control, she had to taser him with a stun gun.
I was shocked, to say the least, when I found out that he was involved in this incident.
That officer says Huguley shouted racial and sexual profanities at her that cannot be repeated here on TV. The female officer says he threatened to kill her, and she finally had to subdue him with a taser. So, does Huguley have a problem with women, perhaps? Straight out to my fantastic expert panel, Courtney Stewart, senior editor for the Charlottesville weekly newspaper The Hook, is with us. Former criminal investigator Steve Kardian as well. Psychotherapist Jen Berman, we need you tonight. CNN legal analyst Lisa Bloom, so glad to have you. And Lieutenant Gary Pleasance with the Charlottesville Police Department joins us on the phone. We begin with reporter Katie Beck with WTVR. Katie, paint a picture of what this female police officer says happened with Huguley back in 2008.
Essentially, she says he was so aggressive and so combative, they actually had a physical altercation in which she said she had no option but to taser him.
Here's what Charlottesville police removed from Huguley's apartment today. A T-shirt with a red stain. Now, could it be blood? A letter to the victim, Yeardly Love, 2 laptop computers, a green spiral notebook, 2 white socks, a bathroom rug, a shower curtain, an entryway rug, blue cargo shorts. Is this evidence going to be make or break, given that he has already allegedly admitted to fighting with her and slamming her head against the wall? We're delighted to have with us tonight Lieutenant Pleasance, who is involved in this case. Sir, do you consider what Huguley said to officers just a couple of hours after this incident, the murder of this young lady, to be a confession?
Well, we can't put context into what he says. We can make these as take these as statements against his own self-interest, and those statements are what they are. Those are statements that say he did certain acts.
What acts?
To say, well, the acts that he said that he did have, he was shaking her violently, and her head did strike the wall several times. Those are obviously statements against his own self-interest.
Did he say that she became unconscious and he left her there unconscious? Or did he claim that, I hit her, she went against the wall, but she was alive and her eyes were open when I left?
Well, unfortunately, I cannot go into more of that with the case still pending in court. I have to be very careful what I can go into. All
right, well, let me ask Steve Kardian, do you think that was a confession? Will it be admissible?
Yeah, it depends in what context. If it was a spontaneous utterance, absolutely. If they read him as Miranda warnings, absolutely.
They apparently did. He had been advised, and he waived his rights under Miranda.
So what we see him is partially coming out. He is alleviating some of the guilt that he has and giving a partial confession. I'm sure the assault went way beyond what he initially told police in banging her head on the floor. He's got injury to his hands. She has severe injuries about the face. I suspect that he beat her severely.
Courtney, does UVA have a reputation of being a big party school? Give us some insight. Put this tragedy into context. What were the factors that might have led up to this?
Well, I think historically UVA has had somewhat of a reputation as being a party school, and it's one that they have really tried to fight over the last really couple of decades. The bar that she was at, the Boylan Heights, is part of the corner district. It's the hot spot for students. There's shops, there are restaurants, bars, bands playing. So it makes a lot of sense. It's also about 2 or 3 blocks at most from where she where her apartment was.
Here's my big issue tonight. Is George Huguley a blackout bully? Could he have been in an alcoholic blackout when he allegedly killed Yeardly Love? Listen to this.
Surprised that he was involved in another type of incident involving physical violence? No. An incident to this extent? Yes.
After his incident with the female cop, Huguley said he couldn't remember being tasered with a stun gun. Jen Berman, psychotherapist, how drunk do you have to be to not remember being tasered with a stun gun? And could this young man have an alcohol problem which contributed to the violence?
You bet, Jane. This is a very, very disturbed kid. He has anger issues. He has impulse control issues. He has a violent history, and he very clearly and very likely has a problem with alcohol, which is a lethal combination, unfortunately, for this young girl.
And he also has apparently a big sense of entitlement. Katie Beck, is there a problem with public drunkenness among privileged kids who go to these universities?
I mean, I think there's a problem with public drunkenness where there are most universities. I think the problem here was that he became so aggressive and combative for obviously no reason at all. This officer was trying to help him, and the next thing she knows, this guy has her on the ground, and she has to use a taser to restrain him. Even after that, he continues to be a problem. So obviously, this was an unusual case, and there was so much aggression and violence used here that they had to take extreme measures.
And
hey, Jane,
we actually are out of time. Sorry, but we're going to stay on top of this story. So stay back here on Issues because we're going to bring you the latest developments.